Here you can't.
Yeah. No, it's I don't know. It was like my doctor's like extra machmir. What's going on? My wife was like making fun of me. Plus, it's like in the afternoon, my appointment as opposed to in the morning. All right. Good morning, everybody. Today is Daf Yomi, the second Bavakama. So we got to the Mishnah. On the bottom of Chaf Daled Amud Beis.
Oh, I have it. Okay.
So we got to the Mishnah, and away we go. Shor hamazik b'shus hanizak. So if you have a case of, please get napkins if you're going to bring that, and forks and plates.
Oh my God!
I don't find it funny. Napkins, forks, and plates. Thank you. You're going to bring it out, then bring napkins, forks, and plates. Thank you so much.
I'll skip breakfast.
Shor hamazik b'shus hanizak. So we have a case of what is the case of damage of the mazik and the reshus of the nizak? It's a ketzad. It's a nagav nashach ravat's but b'reshut harabim. So if you have a case of where a mazik, the animal comes in and gores, it bites, does something abnormal. Right? We'll just talk about goring. Right? That's the simplest way to do it. An animal comes and gores in the reshus. So if it's b'reshus harabim, you pay chatzi nezek. If it's in the public way, then you pay chatzi nezek. B'reshus hanizak, but if it's in the refill nizak, that's the machlokas we've seen earlier. Rabbi Tarfon Aimer nezek shalim. Rabbi Tarfon says nezek shalim. You pay full damage because it was done, and they will soon see. Goring is abnormal. You always pay for goring. Doesn't matter b'reshus harabim. Thank you. Or in the b'reshus hanizak, you always pay chatzi nezek. And Rabbi Tarfon says, as machlokas we've seen several times, Rabbi Tarfon says, no, if it happens, if your animal gores in the reshus of the nizak, then you pay nezek shalim. I mean, why is that? So Rabbi Tarfon, in a place where we are makel when it comes to shein and regel and the shus harabim, that one is pater. So nevertheless, we're more machmer and the shus nizak nezek shalim to go ahead and pay nezek shalim. So malkam sheich karen, so the place where we are more machmer for goring, which is reshus harabim l'shalem chati nezek and din shenachmer love reshus nizak, is obvious that goring should go ahead and pay full nezek in the reshus of the nizak. All right. So yeah, my turn. I just see myself and I know it went off. Yeah.
Oh man.
All right. Thanks. So in this case, not perfect. All right. So therefore, according to Rabbi Tarfon, we learn a kal v'chomer to say, hey, if normal cases you're pater, but in the shus nizak you're chayiv. So certainly over here where you're chayiv for karen, right, for chatzi nezek, certainly you should be more machmer in the shus nizak, and therefore you're chayiv nezek shalim. So Amr Lo, they said no. Dayo lavo min adin liyaz kanidon. He goes, if we're learning a kal v'chomer, you can only learn from that the extent of which you learn from. In other words, and we're learning kanidon. And ma b'shus chatzi nezek, b'shus nizak chatzi nezek. Right, that just like Karen is right, you're chayiv in the shus harabim for chatzi nezek. So too in the shus nizak, you're also only chayiv for chatzi nezek. You can't be more because the Torah says by chatzi nezek you're chayiv for the Torah says by Karen you're chayiv chatzi nezek. Some lahan afani lo adon Karen mi Karen, top of the page. Also me, I'm not learning necessarily right chatzi nezek from chatzi nezek. Ani adon Karen mi regel. I'm actually learning goring from the damage caused by regel. So like in a place like the shus harabim, which we're making when it comes to shein and regel, that you're pater and the shus harabim, but nevertheless we're machmer when it comes to karen. So malkam sheich mel shein vel regel. So in a place that we are machmer and shein and regel, such as b'shus hanizak, eino din shenachmer b'karen, is obvious we should be machmer b'karen and say you're chayiv a nezek shalim. So once again, Amar Lo, Dayo, Lavo, Minadin, Liyaz Kanidon. No, then nevertheless, if we're learning out from somewhere else, you learn that which you learn out from the exact law. You can't overextend it. Mabishus Rabim Chatzi Nezek, Abishus Nizak, Chatzi Nezek. Just like goring, Rabim is Chatzi Nezek, so too goring in the Rishus the Nizak is also Chatzi Nezek. So that was the back and forth between the Rabbanan and Rabbi Tarfon. Rabbi Tarfon says Karen and Rishus Nizak is Nezek Shalem, and the Rabbanan learn out from the Kavachomer, but they only learn out that which they learn from. They're learning that you're chayiv for goring, which is chatzin nezek. So too, you're only chayiv chatzin nezek even in the shus of the nizak. Zok the Gemara. Rabbi Tarf from Leslie Dayo. He doesn't hold this concept of Dayo. Dayo Daraisu. It's a halacha Daraisa. The Tani in the Brisa Medin Kavachem. We're going to Brisa Medin Kavachem. It says Ketzat. Where do we see a Kavachem in the Torah? So it says Vayem Hashem Moshe V'Avia Yorok V'Feneha Halot Techalim Shivas Yamin. Right, so he said over there by Miriam, right, when she contacted by over there by Tsaras, right. So she was for 7 days, right, quarantine. So it says if someone goes ahead and spits, right, their father spits in their face, are they not embarrassed? Are they not basically quarantined basically for 7 days? So Kavachayim l'shchina. Certainly, this should be a kavachayim for shechina that her behavior was not approved, right, by an Hakadosh Baruch Hu, basically punish her, spit in her face, right? Kavachayim l'shechina arba sayan. So therefore, as the kavachayim should be more. In other words, if 7 days is just your one's father, so the shechina should be double that. Ella. Rather, we learn, no, if you're going to go ahead and kavachayim, yes, certainly you should be quarantined. So how much is the standard quarantine there? 7 days. So it's over here, we're not going to go ahead and double it based upon the kavachayim. We're only going to learn out to the strength of the kavachayim, which was 7 days. And so the Gemara says, dayo. When do they not hold dayo? Heicha the mifrach kavachayim. Right? Heicha the mifrach kavachayim islay dayo. In other words, like this. If the Kavachaymer does nothing, then, right, and then you have to go ahead. Okay, what use was the was the limud? It must add on to it. But if we already are learning something from the Kavachaymer, right, we can apply that. We don't need to go extra. In other words, if the Kavachaymer is useful, then you don't need to go more. Then we hold dayo. Right, but if it's not teaching us anything, the Kavachaymer, in other words, the logic is already stated from the base, right, which will soon explain this. Then we would say even more. Then there's no dayo according to this opinion.
The association of one case.
Well, in other words, if this is if this is over here, right. If this works in this case, certainly this should work in this case. So how much does it work in the other case? Does it work more or does it work the exact same? So it depends. If it does, let's see. Let's see some examples of this. Hey, so Hassam, let's say over here in this case, Hassam Shiva. Right, the shechina like sivi. It doesn't say anywhere 7 days for tsaras or for over there for by the shechina. It doesn't say 7 days. So right now, my given is 0. Right, I don't know anything. It's the standard is not 7 days. Right now, the standard is 0. So asa kavachaymer, I see our boss. So if kavachaymer comes to tell you, hey, we should be. The kavachaymer says, hey, if a regular person is 7, so this should be 14. So the kavachaymer says, our boss, and asa dio. And therefore, the dayo, no, it's sufficient to learn that which we learned from, which is only 7 days. If you're spitting your, the face by the father, so to over here, it's only 7 days. So the Kavachaymer teaches us 14, and the dayo goes ahead and brings it back to 7. But in our case, chati nezek siv. It says chati nezek in the Shus HaRabbim, right? Vasek Kavachaymer, and then it comes to Kavachaymer. And therefore the Kavachaymer comes. So if you don't hold, if the Kavachaymer doesn't do anything, right, we already know Chati Nezek. So the Kavachaymer has to be coming to do something, right? So it must be so the Kavachaymer must be coming to tell you the other half, right? In other words, the first 50% was already known from Chati Nezek, even if it's a rabbin, you're Chayiv Chati Nezek. So there's a Kavachaymer should be Chayiv for the Nizak. So that's going to be the other 50%. So therefore the Kavachaymer is teaching you that. Chati Nezek, Achrina Vanasa, Nezek Shalim.
Standard Kavachaymer just teaches you the same thing. This doesn't for sure. That let's say that for sure that's more.
Right. So we wanted. So right. So that's all Rabban's argument. So if you hold dayo, dayo really means sufficient, right? It's sufficient to learn that which surely. So there has to be some sort of limud. If by going back to it's sufficient, there is no chiddush. So then you can't. Then you don't say dayo. Then you learn out even more because the Kavachaymer has to be coming to teach you something. Right.
Example of that.
So that was like what do you mean?
Moshe was the same, turned out to be the same.
No. So Moshe was 0. It doesn't say anywhere that she should be in quarantine. So therefore, right, it doesn't say 7 days. So the Gemara is soon going to ask actually on the source, right? But So
But Yorok says 7 days.
no, but that wasn't the case. That was just that was the other case. That's what we're trying to learn from. If the father spits in the face of 7 days, so what about in this case? It should be 14, right? So in this case, we don't know anything. We don't have a standard, so we're trying to learn that from there to be double. So either Dayo, if you Dayo, then it would go ahead and it would ask a question, it would be a pircha on the Kavachimer. So what are the Rabbanan to say about this? Rabbanan and Shiva, the Shechina Ksivi. No, it does say 7. There already is a standard of 7 in this case, and therefore the Kavachimer will come teach you 14. So Tizka Shivas Yamim, right? So it says over there that it says that she should be quarantined for 7 days. So Tarfon Hahu Tisker Darshinan Diyahu. That over there is coming to teach you that you actually darshan dayo, that you go ahead and say that if the kavachimer is that, in other words, we go back and say really kavachimer should come to teach you 14 days, but the dayo comes to tell you there's only 7 days.
Except in the case of Miriam, she was already cured before.
This is the case of Miriam.
In the case of Miriam,
Yeah.
she was already cured before.
But she was never separated. So they waited 7 days for her. So the Gemara says, I for Rabbanan, so what will the Rabbanan say? So Ksiv Korachrin, there's another passage that says Vatisker Miriam. And it already says that she was already that she was already quarantined. Rabbi Tarfon Ahu, the Afilu Bi Alma, that's going to teach you in general. Darshin and Dayo. Right? We normally darshan Dayo. But like time, don't say, oh, maybe over here, Hacham Shum Kvoda Shel Moshe. Maybe over here, because the covenant of Moshe, Rabbeinu, and maybe that we say Dio of Alma Lo, but generally we don't say it. So Kamash Malon, that Dio is a general rule. So now we're going to give 2 examples of. So Amar Le Rapabli Abayi Hi Taina. So this Valentino Deloy Darsh Dio, that he doesn't darshan Dio Avagab Mifrach Kavachimer, even though there's no kash from the Kavachimer. What do you mean? The Tanya learned advice that says carry the zav. So the carry the now there's 2 different things, right? There's the ziva, right? The ziva is a person who's a zav. It's not just a person who's a balkari. Balkari, a person who has a semen emit from him, right? A zav is someone who has ziva come from him, which is something else. It's not necessarily the right the carry, right? So it says the Tanya says carry the zav minayin. How do we know that the semen by a zav is metame? So it says v'dinu uma tahor b'tahor tami b'tame. Right. So it says ma tahor b'tahor tami b'tame. Tahor b'tahor eno din sheyeh tame b'tame. So it says over there that a person who is tahor, right? That if a person who's tahor, that something his spit comes out of him, so that is tahor. But if tame comes out of him, that is tame. Right? In other words, if a carry comes out of a regular person who's tahor, that is metame, right? In other words, by anybody, even by a tahor person, even though his spit is not. So tame b'tahor eno din sheyeh tame b'tame. So that if we say that the spit, right, of a tame person is tame, and a din that the carry of a tame person is tame, right? We learn that for Kavachimer. And we learn that both out from contact, right? And even masa, carrying. Now, carrying is more of a chiddush, right? Because you can carry something even though you're not making direct contact. And nevertheless, so we say that the carry from a zav it would be metami bein lamaga bein lamasa. V'yamai, and why should you say that? Name a hani kavachimer lamaga. Right, so maybe right now we know 0. The Torah doesn't say that the carry from a zav is matame. So let's say the kavul chomer that we just said only comes to teach you when you make contact, right? Ahani kavul chomer lamaga ahani. However, dayo la fukimasa. But the dayo is sufficient to learn. In other words, by the carry by a person tahor, right, is only matame b'maga, not b'masa. So we'll say so too. We'll say the carry by a zav is also only metame b'maga, not b'masa. So v'chi teva l'maga l'yitzrich, and if you want to say by maga we don't the yitzrich kavachimer. The gavra b'gavra tar, that he's not any worse than a gavra tar. So yitzrich, no, you still need sogadai. I mean a mikra laila ksiv. Maybe I think I still need a pause, right? Because it says over there a mikra laila, right? Mishakira gairim lo, right? So maybe only a person, when does a person become tameh from carry if it's a mikra laila, if it's something of normal nature. However, Yatzazeh Shein Kirio Garim Lo. But over here, it's not normal for a Zav, right? That come, from that to come. Maybe it comes from some sort of disease, his Ziva. So Ella Davar Acher, right? Shein Kirio Garim Lo. Ella Davar Acher Garim Lo, right? So therefore, something else would be would cause it. So Kamash Milan. So therefore, that then we don't. What says me David v'lo davar acher ksiv, right? So does it say lo davar acher? No, you're making the div that you try to say. It doesn't say that. So therefore, we already know that it's matame. So therefore, we already know it's matame by maga, and therefore the kal v'chomer comes to teach you that it's even matame by masa. Uman tan the shmis lei damer shechazer shel zav matame b'masa. And who is the one who said that even the shechazera of a zav is matame b'masa? Says lo Rabbi Eliezer v'lo Rabbi Yeshua. It's not Rabbi Eliezer or Rabbi Yeshua. Why? The Tanakh we're going to miss the shechazera shel zav matame b'maga matame b'masa. So the shechazera, now remember not the ziva, but the shechazera of a zav is only matame by touching, but not by carrying. Divi Rabbi Eliezer. That's the opinion of Rabbi Eliezer. So we see the farish, it's not him. And Rabbi Yeshua Omer af matame b'masa. It is matame b'masa. Lefi sheyefshar b'lo tzictuch ziva. Right? Because within the carry, it's impossible that there is no strands or no strain, whatever, there's no ziva combined with the carry. So therefore, the ziva is that which is matame b'masa. So therefore, if you have the shechla zera of a zav, so there is some ziva in there, and therefore, since there's ziva in there, therefore it's matame b'masa. And because it's impossible for there to be no ziva with the shechazera. That's why it's a type of masa. But if it wasn't for this, it wouldn't be low. Ella high tana. Rather, who is the tana who says the shechazera of a zav is matame mago masa? It's a high tana. It's rather this tana. The time we're going to Mishnah lamala mehen. So we say over there that above them we learn zoivo shazav, right? The ziva of a zav. The roko, the shechazaro, umeme raglov, the damanida, metame, bein b'masa, bein b'masa. The ziva of zav, which we know, and also the spit or the shechazera or the urine or the blood of a nido. All those are metame, bein b'maga, bein b'masa. So the world says, maybe the shechazera is metame because it's impossible for it not to have any ziva in it, and then that's the reason why it's a matame b'masa. So Gemara says no. It should have said in the beginning by where the first part says zova shel zav. It should have said zova shel zav. Right? Why did it say by its spit? Right? The spit doesn't contain any ziva. So to the shivazera el mishum daisi miroko. Right? It's just like miroko. It's just like a spit is matame. Right? Masa. So too shivazera is also matame masa. Fine. Period. So we are 5 lines from the top on Chof Hey Amud Beis. So Amarle Ravachim Yedifta Ravina. Vaha Hai Tana Lo Darish Dio. So I have another Tana who doesn't Darish Dio. But Afagav Deloy Mifrach Kavachimer. Even though, right, that there wouldn't be a kash on the Kavachimer. In other words, that the Kavachimer will still be useful even if you do say Dio. The Tanya in advice it says Mapas B'Meis Minai. So how do we know that a mat? Like a reed mat that has matame b'meis, right? B'meis, let's say it's under an oil of a mace, minai. So it doesn't say anywhere in the Torah. So it says v'dinu. Maybe we can learn a logical argument. Ma pachin ketanim shitahayrin b'zav. So small little utensils. Now small utensils. That normally the way a cleave becomes matame is if there is something tame within the airspace of it. But pachin ketanim are small enough that you can't, the zav would not be able to put his finger inside. So therefore, he doesn't have the ability to be metame these pachim katanim. All right, ma pachim katanim shetahirim bezav, that a zav cannot be metame them metame b'meis. Nevertheless, pachim katanim do become tame meis. So mafit shemetame bezav. So a mat which if the zav comes in contact with, he is metame it. And then that the meis shetime meis is b'meis. Isn't obvious that the mat should be metame b'meis? The Kamaisila, Bein Latumas Erev, Bein Latumas Shiva. And not only are we learning it to become tame for one day, like like he makes it, right? But even 7 days. So it's matame to a day for 7 days. And you're learning from Zav, which is only 1 day. So this is matame for 7 days, right? So in other words, V'yamai. Why would you say that? Ema, why don't you say Ahani Kavachomer Latumas Erev, right? The Kavachomer telling you that it's tame. How long is it tame for? 1 day or maybe 7 days. And then the concept of dayo should say, no, it's not 7 days. Pull it back. Where do we learn it from? Zav. It should only be like Zav. That should be Matami 1 day, right? This is a classic example of how to learn dayo. So in other words, right now we know 0, right? The Kal V'chomer teaches us it's Matami, and the dayo comes to tell you that it should be back from its source, because, and if it wasn't, and there isn't, the standard is 0 right now because we don't know it at all. So relay, Kfar Raman Dilei, Rab Nachman by Zachar Abaye. No, this is already asked by Rab Nachman by Zachar to Abaye. V'Amar Abaye, and Abaye said to him, Tana. No, it says no. Mimapitz b'sheretz ma'aseh. He doesn't learn it from Zav, right? Therefore, no, it's not even Kavachim. You can't say that there's a source that we hold. No, it's not that. He says, actually, the mat we learned b'sheretz ma'aseh, right? We learned b'sheretz from a sheretz. V'achi come. That's what it means to say. Mapitz b'sheretz b'nayin. How do we know that the mat by a sheretz was matami? So it says v'dinu, and we can make an argument. So that small containers are tar when it comes to zav. Nevertheless, time b'sheretz. But if you have a sheretz, a small piece of sheretz, a dead sheretz, goes inside these small utensils that even though the finger of a zav cannot fit in, but a sheretz can. The time of sheretz. So mapitz shemitame b'zav. So a mat which is mitame b'zav. Ein adin sheyeh tamei b'sheretz. It's an obvious it should become tamei b'sheretz. So ela mapitz b'meis menayin. If that's the case, how do you know mapitz b'meis? So menayin. So it says nemar beged v'or b'sheretz. V'neged beged v'or b'meis. It says beged and or by sheretz, and it says beged v'or by meis. Right? Psukim Aleph and Yimel. Right? There's 2 different places. It says over there. It says both places use the word beged v'or. Ma beged v'or how b'sheretz mafitz b'tami bo. Just like by beged v'or, it says by sheretz, and one of the qualities of sheretz is we know that it's mafitz is tame, which we learned from the zav, right? Af beged v'or, however b'meis. So too when it says beged v'or, however b'meis, mafitz tame. It tells you that a mat is tame by it, and therefore. So in other words, it's not an example of learning Kavachemer and say, no, it's not 7 days, only 1 day from Dayo, because we don't even learn it directly, mapitz from Zav. We actually learn it through another way, through sheretz. So Gar says, mufna. It must be that these 2 words of beged v'or, right, are open to darshan. In other words, normally you can darshan this Xer Shava. If both words are available to darshan from, if they're being used for something else, you're allowed to go ahead and ask a kasha in it. So Gar says, mufna, right? These words must be open to darshan. They're available. Ideal mufna, because if not, you can say mala sheretz shechem matami kadasha. You can say like this. Maybe the reason why mapitz is matami by sheretz is because sheretz is very machmer. Why? Because even the sheretz the size of a lentil is matami, as opposed to a tumas meis that is not matami when it comes to a lentil. So therefore, maybe sheretz is more machmer, and that's why mapitz is matame by sheretz. So we say no, that it must be there's mufna, or else we can ask this kasha. Ella bekazayis, right? Because by tumas meis only matame by kazayis. So I says, yeah, lie. Afnuya mufne. Indeed, it is available to go ahead and darshan, right? Sheretz, each case is shigazara. Because sheretz is there's a hekish, there's a comparison to shigazara. The ksiv o ish asher teitze, says or a man who has a teitze shigazara. But samechle, it's written right next to o ish asher yiga b'chol sheretz. A person touches a sheretz. Ksiv ev shigazara says by shigazara v'chol beged v'chol or asher yalav shigazara. It says over there. Right there, we know any beged or that has a panish chazera. So beged or because of Rachman b'sheretz lami. So why do you have to have beged or because by sheretz? So shnami no, it must be indeed that it's lefnui, that it's open to darshan. Vekati mufna mitzad echad. It's only the tzad of the sheretz that it's open. Mitzad echadu and hinich l'mander mufna mitzad echad l'midin. This works well according upon that. As long as one side is available to darshan, then you can go ahead and learn Xer Shava. Then you can ask Shapir. But if one says that only if one side is open to darshan, then you're allowed to go ahead and ask a pirach on it. So we're going to say here. So the word says no. The word beged or demes nami afnuya mufti. The word by beged of or is also open by mace. Why? Mace is kish the shechazera. So mace is written. Tumas mace is written by shechazera. The Chesiv says over there about tamei nefesh, one who goes ahead and touches a tamei nefesh. Oh, isha shiteitzim mena v'chulei, or says a man that comes from a shechazera. Uksiv basis is by shechazera v'chol beged v'chol or shiriyah love shechazera. It says already over there, beged or is matami by shechazera. So beged, and therefore I also know beged or by case of tumas meis. So beged or the kasav rachman b'meis lamali. Why do you need it? So shnami no lafnuya. It must be available to go ahead and darshan. B'havi mufna, and therefore it's mufna mishnei tzadim, and therefore it's mufna from both sides. Both the words beged or are open, available, and therefore we can go ahead and darshan and learn out mapets from sheretz from to mace. So this works well according to the opinion who says learn from it and establish in a place. In other words, we learned that a mapet, a mat is tamei by tumas mace, and then we'll apply the halachas of tumas mace. What's the halacha of tumas mace? It's always 7 days, right? Tumas mace is tamei for 7 days. So therefore, it works out well because you're tamei for 7 days. If you learn from it and use its halacha there, so if you're learning it from sheretz, so it's only tamei 1 day, then it should be the mapets by mace would also be tamei for 1 day. We're going to say there. So the pasuk says, it says over there, right? You wash your clothes on the 7th day. Coming to teach you, right? There's a flat rule that anything that is matami because of tumas mace is not less than 7 days, and therefore we learn from over there that you can't say, oh, domina umina, because over there we have a pasuk to exclude it and says, indeed, it is 7 days. Now the Gemara finishes teaching how to learn dayo, and then we get now into the sugya of learning from one to the other. We'll stop over here. Everyone have a wonderful day, and I'm sorry. Yeah, all right.